There was explosions happening from the 18-wheeler that was way farther ahead that was on fire.
2 people died and many were injured as the morning commute turned chaotic and terrifying for drivers blinded by the combination of smoke and dense fog.
At least 25 vehicles involved in multi-car pileups on Interstate 55 in both directions, including a tanker truck that caught fire.
And in one instance, a driver even managed to survive when his vehicle plunged off the elevated interstate into the water below. Emergency crews have spent the entire day and have made progress working to clear the roadway on I-55 at Manchac.
We do have live team coverage. Chris Welty and Rob Masson have been tracking this recovery process in Manchac. Rob Masson gets us started with the first-hand accounts from drivers. Rob.
Yeah, Liz, this has been a long day, and this day is going to continue for quite some time. State Police just informing us just a few minutes ago that I-55 will remain closed down all night long and into tomorrow so that accident investigators can get here on the scene after daylight tomorrow to conduct their accident investigation. But the day has been extremely tough for dozens of motorists who were stranded up on that elevated portion of the bridge, and extremely tough for friends and relatives of those either killed or injured in that series of accidents on I-55, an I-55 that was shrouded in smoke. With Causeway closed down due to smoky conditions, dozens of motorists decided to take Interstate 55 as an alternate route today. Drivers say visibility was virtually non-existent and many people did not slow down. State Police spent the better part of the day sorting through the wreckage from several clusters of accidents between Manchac and Rudock. Dozens of vehicles were involved. Several 18-wheelers looked like they were completely destroyed by flames, and those who survived couldn't believe what happened.
It was very scary because everybody had to run and get out their cars so fast because the more and more you sat there, the more cars just kept hitting everybody.
We stopped to help everybody, to check on everybody, to make sure, everybody was okay. We prayed this morning to make sure everybody was all right.
And a number of people were taken to 2 different hospitals in the region. We saw a lot of people with bruises and lacerations who did not want to go on camera, too shaken up about their ordeal. So far, state police aren't confirming, but there are reports of at least 2 people dead. There are ambulances still up on the overpass right now, and as many as 30 injured. State police say their investigation is continuing. But again, I-55 in both directions will be shut down throughout the night and into tomorrow morning. From Manchac, Rob Masson, Fox 8 Local First. Back to you.
Our coverage continues right now with Chris Welty. Chris.
Liz, as Rob said, this is a multi-agency operation out here near Manchac, and there are still motorists stranded and stuck on top of the bridge. As you can imagine, today is just a very tense day for so many drivers. As the sun peeks through the fog and smoke, a mangled pile of vehicles is revealed.
I've never seen a crash like this. I mean, I've traveled in South Louisiana for quite some time, so I've seen thick fog. But the pocket of fog we saw coming over the Manchac Bridge, I mean, it was like something you would see in the Central Valley of California, the Thule fog. You just couldn't see in front of you. And luckily I had just happened to look down and saw that GPS. Otherwise, I probably would have, hit that X truck 60, 70 miles an hour.
Along both sides of I-55, multiple pockets of crashes. Loved ones like Carla Birchday drove to the site to check on her family. Birchday's stepdaughter, Hope, was involved in the crash.
She called me and she said, we've been in a bad wreck, and it's just wreck everywhere. It's just a wreck everywhere, and she was hysterical. But she did say, we're both okay.
Birchday's stepdaughter was on the way to a family member's funeral. She's a med student and began helping those in need.
And she immediately jumped out and started going to help do life-saving measures or first aid or whatever was needed.
At least one vehicle was pushed over the railing into Lake Maurepas.
We did have one vehicle that went over the railing. That driver was able to get out of that vehicle, so that's a great situation, but we did have one that went over the railing.
I pray for all the families that their family was injured or even worse.
And being out here live on this scene, you can just see how mangled of a mess this truly is, and the damage that these first responders are going to have to go through to get to be able to clear all of this off of the interstate to free up the people that are still stuck on top of the bridge at this point. Now, as Rob mentioned, the interstate will remain closed. The Department of Transportation, once this scene is cleared, they'll have bridge inspectors that will come out to inspect every inch of the bridge that was involved in this crash. They'll also inspect the overhead truss and the exit sign that was damaged in this crash that was also partially melted. Now, later tonight at 5 o'clock, we'll hear from the DEQ, who's also here on scene. Reporting live from Manchac, Chris Welty, Fox 8 Local First.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. The National Weather Service calls what happened this morning super fog, an actual term when smoke and fog combine to create even more limited visibility.
Nakandra Norwood explains what set these conditions for the extreme event this morning. Nakandra.
Oh, that's right. We gave you that first alert last night that this morning would have very impactful conditions, and we're seeing that now here as we look across the region with a dense fog advisory once again issued. This is going to begin at 3 a.m. through the morning hours again for your Tuesday morning. So make sure you are keeping up with our forecast, paying attention. Hopefully we don't see as bad of a situation, but there is some possibility out there. We've got some hope too, though. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Right now, here's what we're looking at on our visible satellite. Earlier in the day, you could still see that last area where the smoke and fog was hanging on and creating what has been termed that super fog. I take you back in time a little bit here to about 7 to 8 a.m. where we did have more of a coverage all across Lake Pontchartrain. And notice our wind direction is coming from east to west. So remember, we had those wildfires out in the east near Bayou Sauvage, caused a lot of smoke, and those conditions continued across the area through much of the day yesterday, and we've seen that drifting off in the direction of the wind. So with the winds coming in out of the east-southeast, both those Bayou Sauvage fires, and there's still the fire going on down near Lafitte as well, push that smoke in. In addition, the conditions for radiational fog there as well. We had those ingredients in place with clear skies, calm winds, and plenty of moisture to work with. So we got that combination where we not only saw fog forming, but we also have high pressure and a bit of a temperature inversion, warmer air, that whereas we would typically see our fog forming when it cools down, settling in over the area, a little bit of breeze moves around. Well, that doesn't really happen. It just kind of is pushing everything along because it's trapped, and you don't get the air rising the way it's supposed to, because usually as you go up, the temperature drops. Well, what's happening right now is as you go up in the atmosphere, we're actually seeing a little area where the temperature gets warmer and you can't get the air to rise. That traps everything close to the ground, and we got that combination. That's what allowed us to see the fog and smoke, or the super fog. I had a question about, well, why aren't we calling this smog? I think we mostly associate smog with pollution, so it kind of just gives you a whole different level when you've got this kind of activity going on. We'll talk more about it and about what our chances are for tomorrow coming up in a little bit in your Weather Authority forecast.
All right, Nakandra, thank you very much. Let's take a look at your first alert traffic. You can still see emergency crews in the upper right box on the scene of that crash, and you'll still need to avoid Interstate 55 at this time. The Bonnie Carey spillway reopened, and that was around 3 o'clock this afternoon. The roadway looks clear right now, but remember, a dense fog advisory is still in effect for tomorrow morning's commute. So right now, drive with caution.